Okay, there you go. Hi team, welcome back. Karthik from IT Learn. Let's continue with our day 11 for Code Java. Quick peek at what we've been doing. I believe in the last session we were working on the while, do while, and the string operators. We have not really touched math operators too much, but what I want to do today is let's look at math operators very briefly. All right, and then I have the Java objects and classes. Basically, the beginning to the OOPS concept. Okay, and this is going to be a very, very interesting and important activity, team. So far, whatever we have learned is typically what you will see being present in any earlier programming languages, a workflow based, event driven, or based on a specific conditions and so on. And as you go along, you will expose yourself to how you can use Java primarily to be able to start interacting with a lot of other open source tools or even other paid tools, as long as there's a communication possible. So if anything can be communicated with other tools that are there in the market, you will start doing a lot of integration work with them. What primarily flows between any two systems team is called the data. It is all about the information. Finally, they need to just get the basic information in a structure. They need a template so both parties can easily understand that, okay, this is my data, this is how it is right now. Okay, that communication is very critical, team. And for us to get into that zone, to understand the OOPS concept, object-oriented programming systems, and how they work as an approach is very critical. So let's look at our code, math operators. Shall we do that very briefly just for our refresher? I don't know if we did this. Did we do this or not? Let's see. Erase these drawings. I did a restart and it still is pretty slow. Not really, I think. Let's see. Okay, no, it's not. I'm going to realign my windows. Don't look at this code too much for now. It's just as we go along into automation, you'll see all this happening. Okay, my source seems to be having some issues. There's a junit.java that has an issue, team. Just let's see why is it continuing to have an issue. That's primarily because we have not exposed ourselves to JUnit. I would definitely cover that as a brief. You see this in all your membership videos, team. JUnit is present everywhere. So I'm just commenting these annotations. These are called as annotations in JUnit, so it doesn't keep on struggling to recognize it. Because otherwise, because of one script in the project, everything seems to be in a problem. Okay, let's see. There's something that we did in math. Not bad. We did minimum, maximum. We did random. We can do a few more things like average and so on, team. A lot of functions are there. And as I keep talking about these, I want you to refer to W3 schools as well. Okay. What I'm taking you through is the fundamentals, concepts, and how you need to register them in your mind and how to approach them. What you'll see in w3schools.com is kind of a total tutorial, read only. Once you go through my videos, then please refer to w3schools.com, where it will give you a little bit more detailed as to what all a math method can do. For example, I have math here. So see, we already saw what is the maximum of two numbers will get returned, minimum. This is square root. Now, square root is primarily what is it that it's doing? If I take a number, let's say int, I'll start with a equals 121. Now, if I say int b equals, is it math dot square root? Let's set math dot and see all these methods that come up with it. And now in this today's session, team, you'll start understanding what is this math dot min, math dot max, right? How is that math getting connected to our Java program? So there you go. A detailed number of things that you could do. See, to do a square, what is the square of a number, team? Anyone? So give me your answers in the chat. If there is a number called, let us say 12, what is the square of 12? 12 square. It's nothing but 12 times 12, right? Now, if I say a square root of 121, is it how we write square root? I don't even remember. It's been so long. Or I can even do 121 1 by 2 on the top. Okay. We have to find a number when multiplied twice will get us 121. And for that, the square root function will help us. But when we talk about what is this number, team, 12 square? So why did it include a method for square root and it may not be square or triplet? Because you can easily do 12 into 12. You cannot do to the power in basic, our keyboard arithmetics and keyboard computer, right? So you'll need to be able to do something else. I cannot give even 1 by 2. So for multiplication, I can just say, okay, multiply it twice. But when it comes to dividing it, finding the number for it, we will use this formula. So let's see. There we go. Yes, 112 square is 144. So if I put 144 here, 11 square is team 121, right? So if I put 121 here and I do math dot square, everything starting with S should come, square root, that is the shortcut there. And let's give a number in that of 121. And I should be able to print B at the end. What's the problem here? Let's see. Square root. Oh yes. Okay. This is basically, look at what it's saying. Cannot convert from double to end. Now, the output of this function called square root in math may return decimal points. That is the challenge for it. If it returns decimal points, then I cannot put it in an integer. Very simple. So I'll put it into double. There you go. That fixes my simple problem. Now, if I run this code, so just being aware, not just as to what is used, team. As soon as you write math dot, it will return all those methods that you can perform on it. When you're writing, but the point is, what do you mean by min or what is max? The factor that there's an average present, there's a random or rounding or square root. Your awareness that, okay, these are there in math functions and I can use it readily is critical. So as you practice on it, team, you have to expose yourself to more and more of these. That's about it. So when you prepare towards interviews, just be aware as to what all functions are there in each of these common classes that we use in our programming. All right. Cool. So now let's talk about, how do we talk about object-oriented programming system? I will use more diagrams, team, if I may, rather than, how do I say? Writing down things. So team, before you get into the concept of understanding what is OOPS, how do we write classes and methods in Java, let us understand where this all arrived from for us. The origination team is primarily with the concept that let's look at the whole world and ultimately we're able to divide them into objects. We're not saying if it's a living thing or non-living thing. And our entire quest in automating software or building software is to create this infrastructure or applications or source codes. At the end of it, they all have to interact primarily with that specific object. So when we magnify an object and look at it, any object in our world, team, give me an object for an example. I'll take that object from a live class. Let's see how we look at an object. Give me an example of an object in the real life. I'll take a couple that are very standard, like a car and a cell phone. This is also your beginning towards going into more of database team, understanding data, how is it stored and what happens. Can anyone tell me, please? No? Give me an example object, any object that we see. Cycle, yeah. A book, great. Car, bikes. So let's say, so here's the list of things I got, team. Book, cycle, car, bikes, phone, pens, laptop. Perfect. How about taking the first two that I got, book and cycle? I haven't done this earlier. We'll get to, I mean, it's just about understanding object and how they could be looking at. Now I have two objects, team. Okay. My object one is a book. My object two is what? Cycle, right? How does a human first look at them differently? How do we know it's a book and a cycle when we put towards each of them? Visually, there is a difference. What kind of a difference? Certain visual properties that make us identify it. So there are properties that are used to define what an object looks like. What are these properties like, team? Let me take a thinner pen if I may. Sorry, I'm taking so long to switch between colors. Once I have all the colors here, let's take this. So these properties basically define as to how this object will look. We're talking about the look right now, team. Like what? The shape of it, the weight of it, the size of it. There is, of course, a color of it. There is a text that is written on it. So this shape, this is weight, this is size, supposed to be a C. This is this color. And what did I write? Text that's there written on it. Correct, team? Are you all with me? Sorry, I muted for a second. Now, for a cycle, let's look at it. For a cycle, what would I have then? For a cycle, I might have something different altogether. Yes, there's a shape for cycle 2, but it's different shape altogether. There is a weight for cycle 2, and that is different altogether. There's a size for cycle 2. There's a, don't you think the same things match? Don't you think both these objects have the same things? Yes, they do. Then how are they different? Now, if I add, for example, let me take another object that came up in the chat. Where's my chat? Brand, yeah, there's a brand for book, there's a brand for cycle. Let's talk about a phone. If I put now the same thing as a phone, don't you think a phone also can be identified using the same visual properties? A shape, a weight, a size, a color, a text. Could be a brand, what is there, the screenshot, whatever. Could be the book. So these are usually the common properties. What are those properties that make a book unique? Then comes, we'll say, hey, this one has this. Why does fresh Microsoft come on? This one has pages. It is made of paper. Okay, and this is made of metal, most of it, and it has wheels and so on. So trying to make this differentiation between different types of objects became not easy for humans, team. Did you think that as soon as you were born, you could identify the difference between a cycle and a book? No, we could not do that. A bicycle was different, a book was different. As we grew up, maybe 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, as we start to look at things and understand them, there's a learning process for humans who are very smart and intelligent. So then what would happen to systems that are pretty much dumb? They realize on our algorithms and logic to do whatever you say. So then came the concept that why don't we look at everything as an object first, like humans do? But we will try and divide them into certain things. Every object, primarily, team, let's start maybe brown. Look at an object. I'll just call this as an O. There are two things that are important in an object. Okay. The first is the properties. The properties that are used to describe it. Like just saying, if you have my bicycle parked, there's a bicycle parking stand. And let's say if I say my bike is got a certain description like I don't know. It's got, I don't know what to put, maybe a color. It's an orange color, and there's a helmet on it. So I'm able to describe it. But if I look at a car, I don't know if serial numbers are there for bicycles. I think they are. But if you look at a vehicle, you have a vehicle identification number or license plate number. It gets unique. So there are properties that are used to describe a car. I can just tell my car is a red, maroon, or a yellow color parked in the lot so and so. But there are specific properties that are used to identify it. Okay. So it looks at how to identify that specific object and how do I describe that. So in description comes a lot of these details, common details, whatever we can. But identification becomes very specific. So that all comes into the properties as to what does are the different properties an object has. Now the same things can also be interchangeably called as arguments in Java or parameters. We'll keep talking about them. What else do, now we've so far seen properties, correct? Now, is there anything else different about bicycles and a cycle? Sorry, books and a bicycle team, apart from pages, metal, and so on? What is difference? Okay, they look different. They're very different. They have different components in it. But what else is different? Brand of cycle, wheels are different. Sure, wheels are different. Yes, Srinath, you're right. Rajeshwari, you're right too. Rajeshwari, sorry. Anyone else who can comment? Yep, Savita, there you go. What else do objects differ from? They look and feel and how we identify. Is it the only way? The way we use them, the way we can work with them, or the things that they will do, the actions that they can perform when requested or not requested on. Now, what does that mean? A book you can read, you can write, you can use it sometimes maybe as a pillow to sleep on, or a book can be gifted, can be shared. So things you can do on a book team. So if there is, now think of it, very, very core basic programming. Let us say now we're talking books. Let us talk about a company which deals in books. Amazon.com, for example, or Barnes and Nobles. So if you go to Barnes and Nobles or any publisher, for them, the whole concept, the business is revolving around a book. Maybe ebooks these days, but lot of books. So for them, it becomes very important to understand what can be done with books, how, what kind of, weather treatment is there, how do they protect them? Everything becomes important. And these properties go into hundreds and hundreds of fields. To just tell what book is it, publisher, ISBN, this number, that number becomes so complicated. But that is used to basically describe or identify. The most important things is what is it that you can do on it, like an activity or a usage or a function or a method. Okay, what we call in our programming language for this is called as methods. Now the whole concept is to try and replicate this model inside our code. So let's take either a book or a bicycle. Let's take a book team and try and work with it and see what we can do. All right, I've not even where do we start? Let's start in a new Java class itself. I'm still in the same. Shall I do the second one and put it in their team? I'll create a new Java project, right? I'm sorry. Any technical questions that you're going through so far, team? Today is going to be still slow. From tomorrow, we'll pick up speed. I'll need another 2-3 sessions at least to go through the main topics in core Java. We will look at a few more concepts and how we apply it. And we should be able to wind up by the end of this week, team. That's what I'm planning for. So Java project next. I'm starting with a new project altogether. Use the latest Java runtime environment that you have in your system. And everything else is same. Give it a name. I'll just say second Java project. In this, let's do a little bit more on classes. The reason I'm moving team into a different one, the Java perspective, yes. How was my perspective different there? Okay, failure trace. JUnit. don't know why JUnit came up. Okay, this is good for me. I have difficulties in collections of Java. So we haven't come kind of there yet. Let's go through it then. Till then, if you can put a code, then we can look at it in the Skype. All right. But anything that we have done in the live session so far, team, is a great question to bring back into that because it will assist with everyone else in the team. All right. So this is my math. I don't need this. Let me close this. And in my source, I'm going to create a new class, and I'll call this as my class 1. I'll put a main method, and here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say see, control space, enter, inside my main. Now this is my simple regular Java program, and I have inside my main. Now what we're going to do, team, we're going to talk about how we create any kind of a simple class. Okay, I can give it any name that I want, but in this case, let's start with what am I speaking? Give me 1 second, team. I'm sorry, took a few minutes to come back. All right, where were we? Okay, my class 1 inside my class. Now, this is the name of my class. Okay, so I will not confuse you as to what this public and class are yet, but we are getting there now, team. Do you all understand what is a void? If I write a method that does something, then I can say that that is what it is doing. Let us say public void stack. Also, we have to talk about void. My method 1, and this one like this inside method 1. All right. So this will not get called until you say, hey, my method 1 needs to be revoked or invoked. When I call this method, this is not returning anything and it's not passing anything. It becomes your method. Now, when it comes to a specific class, what happens is this specific method is belonging to this class. If I create a variable, say int x, y, and z, these variables are now belonging to this class because it is inside this curly brackets. That is the scope of the variable. So I can say that my specific in my main method, which is going to get executed, I'll put something like see if a class or object. Oh, but mine is my class 1. Let's give it a name. My O object equals new of my class 1. And what happens at this time, team, is basically the fact that my class 1 will now be able to look like this specific class, which has 3 variables and 1 method. Now, whenever I want to put something into my class, I can say my O dot X is basically pointing me to the value of X and say this is equals 10. All right. What? I put string around it and I thought, and then if I print so and say my o dot x, it will primarily be having that value in a team. So now at this point, let me put a break on line 9 and do a debug run. Okay, let's in the perspective. What I want to see is the other variables. So far, x and y, z have been declared, but nothing is put into it. So it's kind of still holding on to it. If I do a step into, where is my step into? Oh, okay, out here. Where did it go? Oh, it went to my class one. See, as soon as it saw that it needs to create a new instance of it, it has gone to my class one. And at this point, it has created a new object team. Now, this is how it is going to look. It is a little confusing for me itself to show you. I want to explain it in even more easier manner. Why am I confusing you all? Hmm. With this name, it'll be confusing theme. Let's do this. New class, and I'll call this as my book one. All right. Let's put a main method in it. That's fine for now. And I just want to leave this completed so that we can look at it. My o dot, what was that method name? My method one. My o dot, my method one. There you go. And basically, this is the method. So let me leave this code here and then get to my book one. Now let's talk about my book one team. We've already spoken about it. There are a few properties for it. We will just take a few of them. Most of them will be string. So I'll say the variable is price, variable is author, variable is title. 3 variables is fine. Let's say variable is review. Now for a object that we want to create called a book, I know that there are 4 properties, just like we were talking about in this diagram. Taking this structure and trying to put that into the into Java on the programming side. Now, what can I do with the book team? That becomes my activities. Public static void read book, then write book, or note, highlight in a book. So my book is getting defined by what I'm doing. So in read a book, you will have a few steps. And I'll say that open the book, go to the page. Now these are all just comments team. All right. As you build a tool like, what is that, Amazon book reader? Didn't come to me. The ebooks that we read on from iPad to phone to everything. So each of this will become a functionality that will actually turn the page in it. Go to the page, read the page, turn the page. Okay. And then I don't know when I'll close it, but sometime I want to close the book. Or rather, read book. Yeah, that's fine. Let's not get very tricky with it for now. Close the book. Kindle, thank you. Night mode, day mode. There's so many things into it, right? Highlight in a book. So what do I want to do in highlighting in the book? Almost the same as this. Open the book, go to the page, highlight the text, turn the page, not necessarily, that's all I'm doing, and close the book. So if you notice, team, we are almost breaking down what we do as humans into simple steps. That is what we will do. If you give a book to a fifth grader and say, read the book, you do not have to mention that open the book, go to the page, read the page. You don't have to do this. But maybe a 1-year-old will have a tough time even holding it correctly, right? Now, as you go along, you will see that this is exactly how it is to teach computers. You have to be very, very highly explicit, team. In the sense, go into the details and talk about simple steps. You cannot miss a single step because a system will not understand. Now, what I will do in my main method is I will say, I have a book one. What do I call that? A book, give it a name. So if I say my book one, if you see, team, this is the same name as this out here class is, how do I name book? Let's see, what books do I have around me? Don't say anything. Let's call this as a red book. All right. Equals new my book one. That's it. We have not gotten into things like constructors and all those things yet. Okay, inheritance. We're getting into the very book. Okay, let's call this as my book one. Similarly, I can create multiple books. My book two is, let's say, a green book. And this is, let's say, science book. Actually, science, math, comic. How about these three books? See now what's happening. I may change this to book two and immediately it gave an error. The only reason being it has to match the class name. What is it that we're doing here? Let us try and put a diagram to it. Unless I do a diagram, things may not be perfectly clear. All right, team, sorry, I'm back. Now, where is it? Fresh pen closed off. Okay, the old image was there. That's good. So now let's talk about very briefly as to what I want to show here, team. Objects, right? You have specific properties to describe, identify them, and then you have methods that you can perform on them. Now, depending on the object, they change. What do we mean by depending on that object, they change? This object could depend to a specific class or a category. So all cars become a specific category or class. And then all cell phones or all books come under a specific category. A class basically says as to how my objects will be described or identified and what I could do on them as a generic template. Once you know that it's a book, you cannot put a VIN number to a book, or you cannot take a book for you cannot ride a book. Not literally, you cannot do it, right? So you cannot drive a book. You can write, you can read. There's certain different things that you could do with a book. All this master template as to what it can do and what it cannot do is all put under the class team. So the class basically tells me how things will look, as what properties it should have and what method it should have. Now look at our Java code. This is my main class, my actual class in this program, which is actually the main class called my book one. That is the name I gave to that class. Now in here are my class properties. and these two become my methods. All right. Why? Because irrespective of what I'm doing here on line 7, 8, 9, I still have that structure. It'll have a price, author, title, review. It can read a book or highlight in a book. Now, when I go back to this diagram, comes my next point as to where is my object. Now, object is basically giving life or putting that into reality. Okay. When you actually can see a car or a book, that is the true object. Otherwise, it's an imaginary concept in a paper or a code or on your mind. That specific, when you take a class and create an object out of it, then that object will contain everything that the class gives, and it'll kind of basically take everything from its class and say, now I know who I am. It gets an identity. It says that, okay, this is what I can do. That object will then be able to have these properties maintained and these methods maintained or methods performed. So look at it. Now, if I have a class for books, I can have 1,000,000 books. But right now, let us say my library has just 3 books. And when I say that a specific class name equals new, that class name in brackets, what is happening is it is basically going to this class. As soon as it goes to that class, these variables are created and it has the access to execute these methods. Okay, so now what can we do about it? How do we know what being done? So for each object in the class, you need to have a name. And this is a great time, team, when I'll talk about variables and this. Now let us say, if I say now int x equals 10, all right? And I do an execution, let's say till line 9. So I'm going to put a breakpoint on line 9, erase these drawings and just do a simple execution. Oopsie, I need to do a debug run. Why didn't these print statements come up, team? Question to you all. Why didn't these print statements show up when I executed earlier? Now I'm doing it in debug mode and I'm here in this line. The reason it did not show up is because we never invoke or call these methods, and that is the reason. Only when we call them, they will get executed. Okay, so my main method, read book and highlight in a book. At this time, I have hit a breakpoint on line 9, and you can see this, that it is waiting for your next steps. So here is the good point, time team. If you notice, a variable X has been created. And in here, next one is comic book. That is line 8 that got executed. Now, as I expand comic book, you will see that it has already allocated space for these 4 items that you can store an author, you can store a price, reviews, and title. Let's say I say step into and go to the next one. And now I haven't yet completed that. It has got math book as well. Now for the science book, it will have to again go into my book 1 because that is the class of it. So the structure of it is very simple, team. The way we write this code is you say the class name, name of the object equals new class name and brackets. If during creation you need to pass some variables, then we use some arguments. But this is your simple template. Now, let us understand the primary difference as to why is it different from variables. Okay. Let's use another diagram, please. Objects versus variables. Very critical, team, this specific one. Can I use a different pen types? Something more like a pen. It's not too. Why is it so rugged? Why can't it be smooth? Smoothest I find. Okay. So objects. No. Control Z works. Yep. Variables. What is the variable, team? Variable is nothing but a simple memory within Java where you have a name to it. Let us say N1. Okay. And you have a value into it. That's one variable, one name, one value. What is that variable data type depends on that value or how you initialized it. It can be string, integer, double, boolean, and so on. Anything, float, different data types. That is a variable. It takes a simple storage space within your system. Now, how about an object? An object, on the other hand, team, is very different. The most important thing for an object is it does have similar things like variables, but it has multiple things, not one of them. So it has a variable called, in this case, what did we have? Price, author, title, review. So it has a variable called price. For the same object, it has another variable called title, then another one called author, and another one called, who's that? Review. Okay, so this entire thing becomes one object. Okay, on a variable, you can basically read and write and update a variable. It'll basically change the information, or you can use the information. On an object, you can definitely do multiple variables, either to define it or for specific feature. It is not always to just identify and recognize team. You want to use those values. And then the additional thing is that you can execute certain methods on it. And that is very important. So how can you execute different methods on it? Method 1, method 2, and so on. That becomes a object. So from a computer perspective, variable has very small storage. Object takes a little bit more space and it can do certain more things. Okay. Is it clear, team, to understand the difference between why a variable and why an object? Now, going back to this code, if I want to put values into comic book, then I say comic book dot v author. Let's start with an author equals, give some value to it. Let's say any authors team. That was the last. And then for same math book, you may say the author. You know, a comic book. How can it be Krishna? As I am. Marvel, all right? Marvel as the producer. Now for a math book, any specific one? I don't know. Math Guru, let's say. And similarly, for a science book, I'm saying science guru. Now, team, do note it's still in the debug mode. So whatever change doesn't really impact it directly right now. But the basic concept is when we get to line 12, 14, and 16, you will see these values getting filled accordingly. And each time I'm having a new method, new object where I can uniquely work with it. Okay. Now you will see how these logics will work. Let's see. Stop this. Put a breakpoint on line 12 and let's re-execute. The reason I execute in debug modes and a lot of times slowly by adding only a little piece of code is team, you should every time at any time when you're stuck in programming, be able to go back 1 or 2 steps back and fix it and go back. If you write everything at once and then run it, you will see that the issues and you don't know where to start from. So go step by step. All right, I hit the first breakpoint. I'm going to continue it. Now I'm here. So at this point, I have 3 objects created and none of them have any values in it. As I go about comic book.author, you will see this specific values getting filled for that specific book. And now let me complete it. What I can do is I have to read the book, right? Which book do you want to read? Then we will pass the string and we'll say v or f for a function variable f book. Open the book. Which book? I will right now say here plus f book. And at the end, I will also say similarly, close the book. And now, whenever I want to read a book, I can just say read book, oh, sorry, comic book dot read the book. And in this, I'm just passing a string, but this string I want it to go as this author. So I'll take this entire value and put it here. And each time I'm reading this as authored book. And the same, if I repeat it now, I will say on my math book, actually, I don't even need to use this. Wait, let me see. For this case, I don't need to team, but in any other case, you will have. So read book, the same one. If I say, I'll show tomorrow's session, I'll show you how we take our classes, put it into a separate Java class and call this from our main method. So there is a main method which calls these classes, and then there is this method which basically this class which is everything about the books. Now comes my next one, which is this. So then, okay, we copy this entire thing and paste it twice. Comic book is done. Now comes my math book. Whatever is the author is going in. So I don't need to really remember. Okay, math, comic, and then science. Let's go in that order then. And let's print this now. There you go. So open the book Math Guru, and we've finished all of this. Closing the book. Open, close. You can do the same thing as highlighting in highlight. String F page. Oh, page is not there, right? Let's do this tomorrow thing, this specific portion. I already feel that I'm confusing you all a lot. I wanted to go in very smoothly with you. The main crux team is to the shape or design of the object. How is it that object will look? What is it that it can do? What is the architecture of that object? That is defined by the properties and the methods. So if I take this, save this as, let's say, my book class .java, and in this my book class, right, I delete my main method altogether. Okay, now what has happened primarily is I have at this point created a template for it and saying that any class will look like this, called my book class. Now when I go into my project, 1 second team, give me a minute. Sorry, I'm back. And then what we will be doing tomorrow, team, is creating a new class and just say run objects 1 and say main. In here, we're going to talk about creating my book class and say my book class equals new, okay, sorry, new book 1 equals new my book class. And as we go about creating in the structure, since both of these are the same project, my main method is able to know that my book class is there, and I could do the same ones there. This will be much more clearer, team, when we do it. I did it all in one class. Now we're dividing it into my main separate and my book class separate. All right, everyone. So we started on classes, another couple of sessions. You'll be very, very comfortable with it. And then we have a few more topics left in Core Java. Great. Signing off for today. I'll see you all back tomorrow then. Take care all. Bye now.